Welcome to the First Player Token Podcast, a short podcast for folks who enjoy playing board games with family and friends. I'm your host, Derek Breath. In this episode, we take a look at a game of queens and kings, and dragons and knights, and basic arithmetic in Sleeping Queens. A bunch of years ago, when my oldest daughter was young, she kept wanting to play Monopoly. I thought it was great math practice for her, but I am no fan of Monopoly. There's very little strategy once all the properties are purchased, and the game dramatically overstays its welcome. I didn't want to play Monopoly, but I did want to encourage her math practice, so I posted my quandary on Facebook. My friend Brandy suggested a game called Sleeping Queens that I had never heard of. I ordered it, tried it with my daughter, and we both loved it. My second daughter loved it even more. Sleeping Queens was her favorite game for years. In Sleeping Queens, you compete to collect some rather whimsical queens, like the Pancake Queen, the Cat Queen, and the Book Queen. All the queens start face down in the middle of the play area, because I think they've all been put under a sleeping spell. You and the other players take turns playing cards from your hand, then drawing cards to fill your hand back up to 5. Some of the cards are kings, also pretty whimsical, like the Puzzle King, the Pasta King, and the Tie-Dye King. The art in this game by Jimmy Pickering and Red Hansen is colorful and charming and a little bit goofy. Part of the fun of playing is imagining the meetup between, say, the Starfish Queen and the Bubblegum King. When you play a king, you get to wake up one of the queens, turning her card face up and placing her in front of you as part of your collection. The gender dynamics here are a little suspect, with the kings doing all the rescuing of the queens, but it is the queens who have special powers, like the Rose Queen, who brings a second queen with her when she's woken up, or the Strawberry Queen, who can't be stolen by other players or put back to sleep. See, a lot of the cards you play aren't kings. Some of them are knights, who let you steal a queen from another player, or sleeping potions that put another player's queen back to sleep in the middle, face down. There are counter cards too, like the dragon who scares away the knight, or the magic wand that wards off sleeping potions. There are also a lot of numbered cards in the deck that don't do anything. They look nice. The numbers are all represented by symbols that correlate to some of the queens, like moons or cats or pancakes. The numbered cards are where the math comes in. If you don't have any action cards in your hand, you'll have to discard a numbered card to draw a new card. But if you can make a simple equation out of your numbered cards, you can discard all the cards involved in the equation and draw that many more. For instance, you could discard a 3, 5, and 8, since 3 plus 5 equals 8, and then draw 3 cards. This helps you get to those action cards, like the kings, a little faster. Different queens are worth different amounts of points. In a 2 to 3 player game, the first player to collect 5 queens or earn 50 points wins. In a 4 to 5 player game, the goal is 4 queens or 40 points. That's pretty much the whole game. It's simple, it's easy to teach, it's fast to play, and offers great practice at basic addition facts. It's one thing to ask a kid what is 3 plus 5. It's another to challenge the kid to find an additive relationship among a small set of numbers that might or might not have one. All of my kids have eventually asked if they can make longer equations, like 2 plus 5 equals 3 plus 4, and we always house rule that in the affirmative because, yes, let's look for those equations. Sleeping Queens is rated for ages 8 and up, but that actually seems a little high to me. As soon as your child starts learning basic math facts, she'll be ready for this game. It's a quick game, lasting maybe 10 or 20 minutes once you get the hang of it, and you can play with 2 to 5 players. The original version comes in a box about the size of a paperback book, so it's very portable. But I recommend getting the slightly larger 10th anniversary edition. Yes, this game came out in 2005, actually. The anniversary edition features 4 new queens, like the most excellent Strawberry Queen, and a couple of new kings. It also comes in a metal tin, like most of the games that its publisher, Gamewright, creates. Yes, Sleeping Queens is by Gamewright, publisher of past podcast recommendations Sushi Go, Abandon All Artichokes, and Forbidden Island. We are big Gamewright fans in my family, and that's why I was excited to see that Gamewright was going to be at Gen Con, the big board game convention I attended in Indianapolis in September. I told my 7-year-old, whom you've heard here on the podcast before, that I was going to interview someone from Gamewright, and she said she would tell me what questions to ask. As it turns out, she asks really good questions. Here's my interview with Jason Schneider, Vice President for Product Development at Gamewright, from the floor of Gen Con 2021. So, who are you and what's your connection to Gamewright?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jason. I am the head of product development for Gamewright.
Okay, yeah, that's exciting. You guys have a lot of product here.
We do. We have a lot of our classics like Slamwich and Rat-a-tat-cat and Sleeping Queens and Forbidden Island and Sushi Go. And we've got some brand new games like Super Mega Lucky Box and Abandoned Artichokes and Shifting Stones. So it's just a nice mix this year.
Yeah, nice. Well, as I mentioned, we're big fans at our house. And my daughter has some questions for you.
Great.
Okay,
Can't
so
wait.
Question 1, how do you make such great games in such small boxes?
That's a challenging question to answer. We make sure that we know that families first of all, don't have a lot of space in their house, and second of all, like to take games to travel. So we make sure that a game can be played in a small space, but also is packed with a lot of fun, both for the kids as well as for the grown-ups, because that's one thing about a Gamewright game, is it's typically a game where like mom and dad or aunt and uncle or big brother, big sister want to play along with the kids. So, and we look for games that have got a lot going on, just enough going on to make it interesting, and not too much to make it super complicated that it takes forever to play.
Yeah. Well, and I gotta say, I think my first Gamewright game was Sleeping Queens.
I always say it's a game that kids get intuitively. Parents take a little bit of time to get up to speed on it because of okay, what does the potion do and what does a dragon do? But once you get it and it makes sense, I mean, in some ways it makes sense that it was invented by a 6-year-old at the time because there's a lot of that in it. But also, she was precocious and she was doing things that she knew grown-ups were going to like too.
Yeah. We actually contributed a copy to the aftercare program at my kids' school.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. I'm sure your school really appreciated that.
So here's my next question from my daughter. How do you make games so colorful?
Oh, well, we work with a really wonderful group of both graphic designers and illustrators to find graphics that are really going to pop off the table. We look at a lot of different illustrators from around the world. We review catalogs of illustrators. And once we know what a game is going to be, then we try to match up the style of the game with the kind of illustration. There is a certain amount of, I would say, magic to it in a way that we don't have a formula. It's not like we have a chart in our office saying, oh, this is a game with food in it, therefore we're going to this illustrator, or this is a game with some magical creatures, therefore we're going with this type of illustrator. It's usually what speaks to us, and a lot of it's just for the artist and the illustrator to be in the right place at the right time when we're kind of hunting for a particular theme. But we always want to make sure that the artwork is both colorful and yet has some sense of whimsy or humor to it, so that there's something you can fall into as a player to see something that you've never seen before the next time you play it. Lots of nice little details in the cards. We do look for all that in all the illustrators that we hunt for.
Yeah. Do you have some illustrators that you keep coming back to, or?
We do. There are a few. I mean, for example, once we started up with our Sushi Go game, of course, when we came up with Sushi Go Party or Sushi Roll, we went back to the illustrator because her name is Nan. She did a great job with the whole look of it, so we wanted to continue on. And there's a stable, but we're always looking for new illustrators because we think the next illustrator is maybe right now in kindergarten or high school and has not yet come up and shown us her thing. And so that's a really exciting thing to think about as a curator.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next question. How do you get ideas for games?
Ooh, this is one of the questions that I get asked the most often.
Right, I came to the right person here, I think, for these questions.
We get submissions of game ideas from everybody and anybody from all over the world. We don't have a published submission website, but anybody who wants to send a game idea into us can send one in. Submissions@gamewright.com is the submissions address. And we review ideas from pretty much famous game designers, people who have made a living out of being a game designer, to someone like Miranda Evarts and her family who created Sleeping Queens, who never thought of a game before, but her mom sent an email to me many years ago, over a decade ago, about this game, and I review everything that I see and pick that up from there.
Yeah. What else can you say about Sleeping Queens? That's, again, one of our favorites.
So it is, and it's one of those games that took a while to get momentum. We very much believe in making games with really strong play value to them. but it takes some time for that play value to spread out through the community. And so we're in its first year, that game only sold a few copies. Now it's one of our biggest selling games over 10 years later because of the momentum that's built, because of families like yours that played it and then shared it with another family. It's really a special game. And the family that made it, the girl who's now a grown-up, right. She's now in college. Yeah. She really just had this moment of inspiration that I think connected with so many kids and grown-ups too. And for that, we're ever grateful.
I love it. Okay, last question from my daughter. Why are so many of your games about food?
Funny. You know, our very first card game was a game about food, which was Slamwich. That came out in 1994.
Okay.
And
wow.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? It's been around for over 25 years. And I think ever since then, we've just had a penchant. First of all, like food, who doesn't love it, right? And be, I guess, inspired by that first game. We're like, well, food seems to be successful. Let's continue to find games with that. And you know, there's been over the years some food games that we've done that haven't done well, but with Sushi Go and Go Nuts for Donuts, and our recent game Abandon All Artichokes, which came out, like, who would have thought a game about artichokes would be doing well? But it's one of our new big successful games. Exactly. Thank you. So and we'll continue to find it. So we're looking for that next awesome food idea. So if you have it out there, please send us ideas for food, for sure. And can I ask your daughter a question through this podcast?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So my question is, what would you like to see next for a Game Right game?
Okay. I will ask her that.
Yeah.
And we will put that answer on the podcast.
Please do. I would love to hear it. And send it to me, and I'll be curious to hear what the response is.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was great.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you.
You should have seen my daughter's face when I told her that the guy from Game Right had a question for her. She felt very important. So I played her my Gen Con interview and asked her to weigh in on Jason's question.
Can I ask your daughter a question through this podcast?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So my question is, what would you like to see next for a Game Right game?
Okay. I will ask.
Well, what would you like to see next?
That's the best question ever. That's the best. I was literally just thinking about that.
Yeah. So? What's your answer?
The answer is, the next game I would like next is a candy game.
A candy game?
Game about candy.
Yeah.
Game about candy.
Game about candy. What kind of candy would you want to see in the game?
Definitely lollipops, cotton candy, chocolate.
Chocolate, yeah.
All the candy.
Yeah.
All the
Well,
candy.
what would the game be about? Eating lots of candy or try to avoid the candy?
It would be about you roll the dice when it lands on chocolate I put in 2 pieces of chocolate, and if he gets a tummy ache, you lose.
Yeah.
So if the cotton candy would be 5, no, 10.
So you want a lot of candy,
Yeah.
but not so much that you get sick.
Yeah. So,
That could be kind of tricky.
yeah, but if you land dice on carrot, then he has to eat a carrot, and if he eats too many carrots, you also lose, because and the only way to win is by giving him the right amount of carrots and the right amount of candy.
Gotcha.
So you want to try to roll the dice and get the right amount of candy and carrots.
Yes. So in Sushi Go, the little sushi has little smiley faces. Mm-hmm. And in Abandon All Artichokes, all the vegetables have smiley faces. Mm-hmm. So in the candy game, would the candy also have smiling faces? Yes. Well, those are fun ideas. And now we know where to send them. Submissions at GameRight.com. You think we should submit those ideas? Yes, I think so too.
Yes.
Those games sound fun. And they wouldn't be the first GameRight inspired games in our family. I mentioned earlier that Sleeping Queens was my second daughter's favorite game when she was young. Not only did we donate a copy to her after-school care program so she could introduce it to her friends, she and I also designed a new game using the Sleeping Queens cards. It was a mashup of Sleeping Queens and Go Fish, so we called it Fishing Queens. I posted the rules to a website called Board Game Geek, 7 years ago now, and I'll add a link to those rules in the show notes. Thanks to the 7-year-old for those great questions for Game Right, and thanks to Jason Schneider for taking the time to talk with me at Gen Con, and thanks to Game Right for publishing so many fantastic family games. That's it for this episode of the First Player Token podcast. See the show notes for photos of Sleeping Queens, as well as a link to the podcast's Facebook group and our new First Player Token coffee mugs. And if you found one of our game recommendations useful, would you share the podcast with a friend? Or maybe review it on your favorite podcast app? That would mean a lot. I've been your host, Derek Bruff. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to play some games.